Hey everybody, it is Saturday afternoon and I'm out feeding cows. This is usually Dad's job, but he's away, so I'm doing cows today. Now, we don't really like to feed cows because it's a pretty expensive process, and well-managed cows should be able to go and get their own feed and haul their own manure and all those kinds of things. So then why are we feeding cows there we go. So why we're feeding cows this year, even though we don't like feeding cows? Well, you see, we are feeding cows because this past year we had a really bad drought. It was like 35 to 40 degrees Celsius for a good portion of the summer. We had more than 2 months without rain, and it was not a good growing season for anything the cows like to eat. So our pastures didn't grow very well, our hay fields didn't grow very well, and there simply wasn't much to be had for feed for the cows. So our swath grazing didn't pan out, but thankfully we did actually get some green feed and slough bottoms and whatnot. So we do have something to feed them, which is, I just went and put some green feed out, and we're into last year's hay now. My dad is a pretty good manager of the cows, and so we have lots of hay left over. We try to keep a couple months worth of feed carried over from each year so that if we have a really bad year like this year, we don't get stuck in a bad spot without feed. So in this part of the country, most of our neighbors actually are pretty good for feed for this winter, which there are places where they didn't have anything, they had to import feed if they wanted to have anything to feed their cows, but we're actually in a really good spot, which is, we're quite blessed to be where we are. But so things that we've done in the past to avoid having to feed cows, because we don't like to, we just started down this path, regenerative ag, and trying to be better managers of things instead of just sticking to the same way we've always done it. So things that we've tried is swath grazing, where we grow a crop and then we cut it and lay it in big piles and let the cows eat that. And we have done standing grazing, where we plant a crop on the place we normally grow grain and let the cows eat that. Which you say, well, why wouldn't you grow grain there? Well, it's part of a rotation thing. It's kind of complicated. We will get into more of that later. But anyways, so it's standing grazing, swath grazing, intensive management grazing, where you only let the cows have a small paddock at one time and you rotate them through a lot instead of putting them out in a big pasture for the whole summer. So it's a lot more work, but we're getting a lot more usage out of our pastures. And even this really crappy year where nothing grew, we have 2 full sections, so like 1,200 acres of pasture that we never touched, which is pretty awesome. So you can kind of see management is starting to make a bit of a difference. But it's not just the people and the way that we manage things, you also need the right cows for things too. So when we started on this a few years ago, one of the first things that had to change was our cows, they're a living being, they need water. And so one of the first things that had to happen is our cows need to learn to eat snow. And you say, well, Tyler, that sounds awfully cruel, making a cow eat snow for water. Well, yes and no. I'd like you to think about what the buffalo used to do when they roamed here. They certainly didn't have water fountains out in the middle of the winter, so they were obviously eating snow. And a lot of really tough range cows in different places in Western Canada, that's what they do. They get put out to pasture for the winter, and that's just how it is. And they have it even tougher than ours do. We monitor them to make sure they're getting enough feed and make sure that they're getting enough water through the snow. We monitor their condition when we do that because we're good managers. So some cows have it even tougher than this. But I don't think it's cruel because the cows are eating things that are covered in snow. They're constantly picking up things on the ground which are covered in snow. They're eating a lot of snow anyways. So when the snow is nice and powdery like this, it just fell actually here the past couple days, it's really easy for them to get the water that they need out of the snow. Sometimes it's more difficult when things are crusted over and a little more difficult for them and they start to not look quite as well. But it's something that the cows have had to get used to doing because our cows need to work for us and be profitable. We can't always be catering to them. And so if our cows are in the corral all the time, and if they're in the corral, that means that they are pooping in the corral, which means we will need to eventually haul manure out of that corral, and that's another added expense. And you start adding expenses up like that and they get pretty crazy pretty fast. So our cows eating snow has made the biggest difference because it allows us to feed them wherever there is feed, not wherever there is a watering system that'll tolerate our winters. So that's really made things more flexible. Because actually where the cows are right now, there is no watering system. We would have to ship them across the road onto the pasture that's designated for calving, and that would just complicate things and make them difficult. So it's really nice that they're able to eat snow because they can eat wherever it is that is most convenient and the best management for us to have them eat. So that's a little bit of feeding cows explained in less than 5 minutes, hopefully. And we'll have another episode for you sometime soon, but this one should be airing on Sunday morning because I don't work on Sundays, so I'm doing it now. All right, thank you.